Mm-hmm.
Oh wow, that affected it. Good evening, everyone. To holy crap, the comes from it. You don't know. There's like a long delay. Time that I live to says live. Way to go. Part of this is to follow through. I'm your main. If you'd like, good to be back. Yeah, I will be off somewhere about. However, my host Court
I am not.
from the coast of the U.S. just
Yeah, well, now that the storms have calmed down, it is. It felt like it was the beginning of a hurricane down here.
and
Gotcha.
good to be with you. As usual. If you'd like, feel free on Saturday night.
Wait, wait. You said live? You mean like we're in front of an audience? Like right now?
Yeah, like the Sweat Hogs. Follow this.
Why did you not warn me about this shit? I didn't practice.
Are you wearing pants?
No.
Good. That's
See, I'm technically wearing shorts, and those aren't pants. So,
anybody
and
that's
I'm a real geek and nerd because mine are cargo shorts.
anybody that's
The
technical.
the people who know what stand-up comedian I'm talking about knows exactly what I'm referencing when I say cargo shorts.
Join us live. Tiffany was so. Hi, hon. Yeah. Oh. Yes, my audio was way the hell down.
Holy shit!
Sorry about that, Chief. I just looked over at my at the volume meters, and my volume was way the hell down. Sorry about that. Dalan, can you fix that? Sorry. That's my
Well,
fault.
see,
That's my
on my
fault.
end,
That's entirely
I
my fault.
I never noticed that because I had user volume set higher. So when you upped yours, mine just blasted my eardrums.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. So the whole up yours joke, I'm not gonna make that now. That was entirely. I was futzing around with my audio mixer before, and I had moved a whole bunch of dials and toggles and switches and buttons and knobs and things, and I forgot my master volume slider is supposed to go up to like there. Sorry. That's my fault. I'm sorry. Hi. See, this is what happens when things go this way. Again, I'll be explaining momentarily why I'm the way that I am right now. It's not a great thing. It's so. How about I do that? I'll get the 5 minute freestyle done, and we can.
And I'm gonna mop up the blood coming from my eardrums.
I was about to say I appreciate that, but I'm sorry. My God, I'm sorry.
It's all right, man.
I mean, just
Well, now I know how you feel. Like when my cat came on the line the other day.
you mean like just tonight before we got started too?
Oh, it wasn't that loud tonight.
Yeah, I was. But
Okay,
we were off the air, so it didn't matter.
exactly.
We'll work it over. So let me go
Besides,
ahead.
your earbuds keep the blood in your ears. I've got these. Mine go around, so I got a cup full of blood. Yeah.
We'll go with that.
Go to
So
your freestyle.
let me go
I'm
ahead
gonna
and
go
do
on
that
mute.
then. So then, with 5 minutes on the clock, your 5-minute freestyle starts right now. Blender. Now, before anybody goes ahead and asks, is it all about that Blender for Dummies book that you got over there in your office? No. Matter of fact, this does stay in my office, which, oddly enough, this book did not come with a CD of stuff to test with it. Some of the For Dummies books did. CDs, floppy disks, for anybody that actually remembers what those are. Whatever. In this particular case, Blender is got nothing to do with software. It's got everything to do with wetware, however. And my head in particular. The work that I do currently is very physical work. I have lost a lot of weight. I have lost a lot. And I'm starting to get some, physicality in me again. I have muscles that end up sore quite often, especially in my hands for gripping. Those of you that have never played a stringed instrument and never used one of those, spring-loaded things to try to get your finger muscles into much better shape, you don't know how much pain you can actually feel through individual fingers. It's annoying because I'm gripping stuff a lot. And in this particular case, I mean, like, plastic bags. So you need the grip. This week, it was busy. And I say that very, very, very undertoned. It was busy. There were a number of times this week where I had nowhere to put things that were being donated. Now, reminding you that how it works is people come to the shop that I work at and they bring donations. It could be almost anything. And I have to, receive it, thank them, bring it inside the shop, put it onto a cart, and then get my butt outside so that I can, greet the next person and receive the next things. Well, we had a lot of people. We had a lot of boxes, some of which were full, some of which were not. And there was a lot of stuff that came in. And I mean, it was a lot of stuff, and I had nowhere to put it. And when that happens, bad things start to happen because you have to do a little bit of triage. So you put it into these wheelie bins, and when you run out of space with the wheelie bins, you put them on the sidewalk because there's nowhere else to do it. And that is the worst case scenario because now you're interrupting the spot that you have to walk along or your customers have to walk along. And we had this happening for sections of this happening for basically the entire week. We cleaned up. Can't be wrong. We ended up cleaning up stuff, but specifically Tuesday, it was bad. It was to the point where I stayed an extra 2.5 hours of really heavy duty physical labor, moving stuff around to get things inside the place. To give you an idea as to just how much so, the media that we collect, which includes VHS tapes, DVDs, Blu-rays, player piano rolls, but especially books and magazines, printed media. We had to fill a cart. And it's not just any cart. The usual media cart that covers all that is like half the size of one of the, or maybe a third the size of one of the regular carts. And we filled a regular cart, very tall, with overflow. 1,400 plus pounds of overflow of just printed books and magazines alone. And I helped in getting in all of that and all the stuff that was along the floor and all the cloth, all the dresses and all the shoes and all the everything that had to come in and organized it. And by the time I left 2.5 hours later, we had done a really good job of cleaning up. So for me to go ahead and say that at the end of this week, my complete head was just blended. And this week, temporally for me, was just one day that's just stretched over a week. Because the week didn't end, the day didn't end. Days like this happen. If you're in a situation where this has been happening for you too, relax the best that you can. I feel your pain. I'm with you. But please, don't lose sleep over it if you can. Because last night I did. I couldn't get to sleep until there was actual sunlight starting to happen. And unfortunately, I now have a habit of waking up at about 7 o'clock. That's a bad moment. Folks, take your time. And just try to be kind to yourself, because Lord knows, I'm going to cut us off tonight as quickly as I can so that I can try to get my ass to sleep. Because Lord knows, I need it. This was not. No. We'll have to look forward to that. Tech, it's up to you to make sure that I get my ass out of here. So, tangents, minimal, if possible.
Okay.
So if I start going off the deep end,
So I was in the bar the other day. No.
Did you run into it? Because I'm wondering if you got a concussion.
No. I don't run into bars.
You
I walk deliberately into them. Yep.
makes
With
perfect sense.
full determination and strength of will.
The only reason that you're getting in there is so that you can get the alcohol to dull the pain afterwards, right?
Yeah, we'll go with that.
I'll go with that.
I'm so alone. No, just kidding.
Join the club. It's time for the horrible scopes. So let's go ahead and do this.
Oh, okay.
So for those of you that know where your astrological sign is, cool. Those of you that don't, buy the damn 12-sided die with all of the astrology symbols on it and memorize them. Under $10. Come on. Just do it. It's worth it. I mean, you can just, shake. I really shouldn't make that motion anymore. You know what I'm talking about. You can just roll them out and just roll the bones.
It's dude, dice are so easy to get now, especially gaming dice and customized dice. It's insane. Just do a quick Google search for game dice websites.
Sure.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, do that. And worst case scenario, 3D print your own. They don't have to be perfect. Just it's fine. This week, I'm drawing inspiration for... Okay. Never you mind what inspired me this week. We're delving into a challenge for all of you. Spot the made-up cryptid listing.
Now, for those of you who are following along with the home game, cryptids are animals that cryptozoologists believe may exist somewhere in the wild, but whose present existence is disputed or unsubstantiated by science. Think of Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster, or the Chupacabra. They don't exist according to science because there's no true evidence of them.
Are you going to Boyardee my entire show tonight? Is that what you're going to do to me?
No, but I figure if some people are listening are going, what the hell is a cryptid?
It's an excuse for them to go and look it up and educate themselves.
Well, there's a huge ass list, so.
Yeah, but it's only 12 listings long, so I mean, how bad could it be?
Roll D100.
Let's roll with this one. Aries, we're going to start off strong in the is it made up part by giving you the Czechoslovakian Dong Wrangler. No, I did not misspeak. According to reports, this 12-foot or 3.66 meter tall terror stalks the hills in Russia carrying a handbag made out of human hair. All in the vicinity of where the Tsar Bomba was detonated. Legend has it that he may have once been a construction worker at a Russian nuclear plant, and his existence was simply erased from all records a year after he began working there. This week, invest in a cheap Geiger counter. Not the painter, the sign. God, whatever. It's fine.
You know what? There is absolutely nothing wrong with investing in Geiger's works. Taurus, you might not think this one is worth considering, but this organization's information is almost never wrong. Designated Sierra Charlie Papa dash 4666.
No. Don't do it the official way. Just
SCP TAC 4666.
That's the one.
This extremely long-lived humanoid has an active season stretching from the end of one year and just into the next. I'm going to screw this up.
Pronounce it as a V. Yes.
These Weissnacht events are most dangerous to immature human children with negative personal traits. So, all children. This week, familiarize yourself with the sounds of cloven hooves and rattling chains, and hope you haven't been a naughty child this year.
Do you even realize just how soft you get when you get into these? I mean, come on. You've got a microphone. Just go, whatever.
What?
You know what? Much better. Gemini, you get one of the most terrifying of all the cryptids on this list. We'll describe it for you first so you can get a feel for why it is to be feared. Imagine this. A creature with near unlimited knowledge, having a flat, rectangular face and an exposed spine to one side of its body. Said body can open and cut your fingers potentially hundreds of times at will. This week, visit your local public library and ask the staff if they know what this monster is and what it's called.
Cancer Moonchild. Taking us back to 1735, your cryptid is known as the Jersey Devil. Described as a two-legged, hooved monster with a sheep-like head and scaly wings, reported to be seen mainly in Pine Barrens, New Jersey. One sighting was in the winter of 1909, where people reported a trail of hooved footprints going under fences, across rooftops, and onto walls that appeared in the snow one night. This week, don't be alarmed by this cryptid stomping ground is where McGuire Air Force Base is located. Totally a coincidence.
That's their story, and they're sticking with it. They had no comment for me on this one, by the way. I want you to know. The fact that I didn't contact them first has got nothing to do with it. Leo, taking you into New York State by way of Loch Ness.
I'm sorry.
Pronounced properly as Loch Ness. You have the legend of the Silver Lake sea serpent. Originally spotted in 1855, this beast was described as a massive, scaly, dinosaur-like creature born from the depths of Silver Lake, possibly an offshoot of the same species as Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster. To date, neither creature has been seen together with the other, leading the locals to believe they are actually the same creature. This week, try panhandling for silver and gold nuggets.
I'm sorry. Virgo, we're taking you to the Western Canadian region, in particular to what the hell? Okanagan? Okanagan Lake in British Columbia.
You want me to do it?
The Ogopogo
Exactly right.
is an inland sea serpent upwards of 15 meters or 50 feet in length with smooth dark skin and a body thicker than a telephone pole. So, Nicki Minaj. According to First Nation legends, the monster moves at incredible speeds, coiling its body in vertical undulations and propels itself with a powerful tail, like most twerkers. This week, buy a life vest and wear it everywhere you go.
Libra, you go to the other side of Canada for your creature. Hailing from Lake Utopia, New Brunswick, is a monster known as Old Ned. Sightings also go back to local indigenous folklore. He is described as a serpent-like and scaly, swimming very quickly across the lake. This week, take a fishing trip to Lake Utopia and drive around Long Island 3 times at 2 in the morning. Let us know if Old Ned says hi, and if we don't hear back from you, we'll just assume the worst. I have to say, every time I read the name Old Ned, I keep going back to Otis from the first Superman movie, and I can't help myself. It's Ned Beatty, and I can do about it.
You know what bothers me is when I try doing a search for certain things and they just, where they used to give the pronunciation, now they don't. Anyway, Scorpio. In South Africa, they have something called the Tokoloshi.
Close enough.
It's an evil creature about a foot high, looking something like an evil monkey. Locals believe that raising the bed above the ground will keep you safe. Now that you know about this one, remember that dangling your foot outside your bed sheets is a surefire way to be attacked by one of these creatures. This week, sleep with the fan on.
Which, in and of itself, is a whole other thing best saved for another night. Sagittarius. Into the numerous islands of Indonesia, we bring you reports of the Ahul, a winged cryptid thought by some to be a giant bat or a flying primate. First reported in 1925 by Dr. Ernest Bartels. No known relation to the Bartels and James wine coolers, by the way. It's been sighted in Java and across Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Philippines. This week, learn to respect the sky puppies. Or else.
All right, how do I say this damn thing? I know jackalope. What's the other one?
Vulpertinger.
Thank you. Capricorn, you're fairly familiar with the jackalope. Well, we'll take you to Northern Europe and give you the Vulpertinger. Said to have the body of a hare, the antlers of a deer, and the wings, feet, or beak of a bird. Apparently, they haven't made up their mind. Most other animals are safe from them as they only eat herbs, roots, and insects, like most vegans. But travelers are warned to avoid them because they can spray a skunk like odor, again, like most vegans. And anyone unfortunate enough to come in contact with the Vulptingers' saliva would grow patches of thick hair all over their body. This week, invest in hedge clippers.
Not for the reason that people would otherwise think. Aquarius. On the eastern side of Africa, we take you to Tanzania. Why did I specify the eastern side of Africa? Because, Aquarius, we know you didn't graduate knowing full well where everything was in Africa. We know how smart you aren't. Right. For you, you get the... God, I have to pronounce this one. Mingwa. It's a little tough for me to pronounce because there's only one vowel in all that and too many consonants otherwise. As hard to pronounce as it is elusive, the Mingwa is a ferocious nocturnal cat the size of a donkey, but with stripes like a tabby. With a name that translates literally as the Strange One, Mingwa was first documented in the early 1900s and was even discussed in the respected British scientific journal Discovery after several Tanzanian natives were allegedly attacked by them. This week, we know that your last words before your death will be... We know.
But
We know.
if it's truly a cat-like creature, there's an easy way to defend yourself, as another YouTube video shows, where these group of kids were in a car and what was it? It's a lion? I don't know. It was a feline, the kind that eats humans. Came out and was right in front of the car. One of the kids had a laser pointer. Boy, did that cat take off after the laser pointer, like most cats do. For those at home who have cats at home and own a laser pointer, they know exactly what I'm talking about. So it works on big cats as well as little ones. Pisces, you've seen enough Japanese cartoons to know where this one's going. Sorta. Swinging over to Madagascar, you get to experience the Yate Vio. Fuck it. AKA the man-eating tree. A tribe known...
Veo.
Okay. What he said. A tribe known as the Makoto had a ritual sacrifice in which the tribe offered up one of their own to a large tree they called the...
Yateveo.
What he said. The tree then devoured the sacrifice. Why they did this is still a mystery. This week, get rid of your copy of La Blue Girl.
Those are your horrible scopes for this week. If you like what you got, don't know. And if you've been able to figure out which of the listings is the made-up one, well, Trading Places rules apply. We'll send you $1, maybe, if we think about it. Maybe we'll send you some orange juice or something. I don't know. I'll have these posted at the end of the week. Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook, Discord, and who knows, if you pay attention to the tags, maybe I'll actually let everybody know which one was the made-up cryptid, because I think it's going to be really entertaining to find out who actually comes up with the right answer and wants to claim the title of, yes, I found it. It's episode 459 on the docket, Your Honor. Can't make us. The Supreme
Challenge
Court.
accepted. I'm just saying.
No, that's exactly right. One of the longest reigning, I don't like using that term, members of the Supreme Court of the United States of America has gone ahead and basically said, oh, I'm sorry, you're all upset about us not having an ethics regulation to follow? Well, Congress, you can't do anything about it because you just can't. Except that
I should point out that one of the things he actually said in response to the concept of adding these kinds of ethical stuff is he said that he had to defend himself because nobody else was going to do it for him, so he had to do it. And it's like, oh, that's so horseshit. Nobody's attacking you. They're talking about putting in place a set of ethics that you have to follow. Okay, that not just you, but everybody on the board. It's not specifically targeting you. It may have been inspired by some of the bullshit scandal shit you've been guilty of, but it's not only for you. It's the whole damn court.
Especially considering that pretty much every court judge in this country has some ethics rules that they are supposed to be following and will be prosecuted if they don't. Sometimes as far as even removed from the bench, possibly jailed, fined, whatever's deserving at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that you can impose this on us because reasons doesn't even be okay. There's a big piece about all of this, and unfortunately we kind of have to give you guys a little bit of boring explanation of how the US government was designed, not functions, was designed. If you want a much more entertaining way of finding out a little bit about it, go look up Schoolhouse Rock. There are a couple of songs in there about in the grouping called America Rock, and it will give you some overall ideas of how some parts of the government are supposed to work and or how they are designed to operate. The United States government was based on a triangle, a tertiary system, so that we have three branches, each of which is supposed to keep tabs on the other, keep them all in check, so that no one branch should have more power than the others. It's supposed to be a system whereby one group checks the power of the other, checks the power of the other. That's the way it's supposed to operate. So we have the three branches, which are, and yes, I can actually name all three of them without singing the songs in my head, unlike some Congress critters. First is the executive branch, headed by the President of the United States. He is effectively the chief operating officer, the one who is entrusted with keeping the laws and affecting the laws. And if someone is not following said laws, that they get prosecuted for not following the law.
Mm-hmm.
Next with that is the legislative branch. That is the group that actually draws up the laws. It's their job to try to argue through, find out what's lacking, what is not working correctly, and they enact, well, the laws and set up the rules for what our society is supposed to be doing, theoretically for the betterment of the country as a whole and the individual areas to try to make things better, ostensibly. Finally, the group that we're talking about, the judicial branch. And I'm having a hard time with this one because it's the ridiculousness of this whole damn thing is just running through my head again, and I'm really trying hard not to just laugh at this whole thing, literally laugh. The judicial branch is the one that is tasked with determining what is legal according to the laws, and usually going as high as to comparing whatever is brought to them, which is at a federal level, against the Constitution and how it and its laws have been written, to find out if there is a trial of some sort, which is a legal thing, if it becomes of enough import that this court has to adjudicate the question as to what's been posed in front of them, they then get to try to determine A, who is in the right and who is in the wrong with what's presented to them as relates to the laws already on the books. And that's where their findings are supposed to be. And I'm laying these pieces out, this one in particular, the way that I am, because recently there have been certain things that have happened that have brought that into high question. We're going to get to some of that. Now, the way some of this stuff is supposed to work, for example, the legislative branch writes up a law that they want. They then submit it to the president, the head of the executive branch, for them to acknowledge it and sign off on it, completing the possibility as a law. Well, the president can sign it, making it a law, meaning the executive branch acknowledges such, and they are ready to go ahead and enact whatever it is and follow through with it. Or it can be vetoed, meaning, no, I don't agree with this. So tough. Gets kicked back to the legislative branch. The legislative branch could then take another vote on it. And at a certain threshold, they can override the executive branch and say, we believe enough in this that enough of us have voted yes on this. This is going into effect now over your head, so to speak, because you didn't do what it is that we wanted. Now, executive branch could then go ahead and say, we don't think that that's legal. And that's why we rejected it. We're taking you to court. So we're going to go across the street to the Supreme Court. And we're going to hash it out with them. And they can then take their gripe in front of the Supreme Court, and they're the ones that look over the information, and they determine, is the law that's been put into place legal or illegal as relates to, the laws already on the book. So if the judicial branch sides with the executive branch, then the law is struck down, it's null and void, and, well, tough, go back to square one. If instead they uphold the legislative branch, then law goes into effect, and the executive branch just has to suck it up and follow it, because that's what the job is. So there's supposed to be this sharing thing of everybody is making sure that everybody else is doing the right thing. And as was stated earlier, pretty much every judge in the United States has an ethics rule that, set of rules, I should say, that they're supposed to follow, except for the Supreme Court. For no other reason other than the propriety that we had always thought about. That, everybody is expected to behave and comport themselves. So there should not be any reason for someone brought into such an austere position that there's no reason why we would need. They would simply just do what's the right thing anyway. And we're finding out for minimally the last, 20 years? At least?
Plus.
Well, 20 years for at least one of them. That they've been taking undisclosed amenities,
Gifts,
trips, lavish trips.
I want people to understand something here.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to kind of put something into perspective. Where I work now, I don't work directly for the government, but I work with the government.
Right.
And I'm not going to say where I work because that would be stupid. Now, what I can say is that if somebody tries to give me a gift, right, I have to ask them how much it cost, assuming it's not money directly.
Right.
Something like a gift card where they put the denomination on the gift card kind of thing. If it's a gift of something else, I have to ask them how much they paid for it. If they paid $25 or more for it, I cannot accept it because it's considered a bribe. I want you to think of that for a second. $25. What can you buy with $25? Well, I can buy some food, especially if I've got some coupons. I can probably get some pretty good stuff.
You can get a bottle of wine.
Get
spirits.
A bottle of, depending on the kind of wine you like. Some wines I like, $25 would leave me with a whole lot of change. I'm cheap on wine, but the point is that for the average person who lives maybe paycheck to paycheck or every other paycheck to every other paycheck, or maybe they're 3 months away from being, it would only take them 3 months without work to be broke. Okay, $25 can get you some things, but it can only get you so much. And one of the justices of the Supreme Court took a flight on a private plane to Alaska. Right? And that's just the tip of it. Okay. And that costs a lot more than $25. He never declared it like he was supposed to. it was found out and reported against him. But because there's no code of ethics, okay, it's not like he's going to see punishment for it. Sotomayor, another justice, Sotomayor, I keep forgetting how to pronounce her name.
Close enough.
Yeah, she's been making lots of money by pushing educational organizations to buy her books. That's actually an abuse of power from her position. But because, again, there's no formal code of conduct that's written that they have to follow, and they literally write and enforce their own rules whenever they want to, she's making bank. And if she was retired from the justice and she wrote books and encouraged the educational institutions to buy her books, saying, hey, buy my book. Anybody who remembers watching The Critic, that was a hilarious episode. Buy my book, bling. Anyway,
That'd be a completely different matter.
yeah, it would be under completely different circumstances, because right now she holds a position of power, a position of authority, just like Justice, what is it, Alito?
Yep.
Yeah, he's the one who took the trip, and it turns out they're finding out other things too. And one of the Supreme Court justices, Chief Justice John Roberts, actually admitted that, says that, hey, the Supreme Court can do more to adhere to the highest standards of ethical conduct. But he never recommended what those things were. So that's kind of like saying, yeah, we could do better as a society. And then just that's the end of your sentence. It's like, okay, well, what did you have in mind? And getting a no response. So this is not a good thing.
No.
If somebody gives me a gift card worth $26 and I don't report it, I'm out of a job. I'm possibly going to see fines. I might go to jail depending on who it came from. 25 bucks. 25 bucks. And these people are getting millions and millions of dollars. Tell me where I'm wrong for going, yeah, they should have an ethical code of conduct that they should be uniform and that they should have to follow.
Now, the funny part about this is, to the best of my recollection, there already is some ethical pieces in place just as being a general governmental employee, that they're supposed to be self-reporting various different things for dollar amounts and gifts and that kind of thing anyway.
But don't forget, they have to, they kind of enforce their own. It's a lot like saying, no, please don't regulate the energy industry. It'll be self-regulating. Go to Texas in winter or the middle of summer and see how well that works out for the general population.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is, yeah, let's kind of go down that angle a little bit, because the way that I wrote up how I wanted to talk about this tonight, it's got everything to do with the whole who watches the watchers when all is said and done. I've heard so many different times that in past, let's call it decades, because I don't want to say years, past decades, the Republican Party has had the overall arching platform of reduce the size of government. And I've said before on one of my openings, I'm all for that. I think it would be a good thing. This way, there's less money that has to be put into the federal government, and more money could be put onto, local stuff that helps, people locally. But the problem of it is, if there's no oversight, the market just goes haywire and does whatever the hell it wants, regardless of what economic model people want to go with. The whole invisible hand of the marketplace will, things will regulate all on their own. That's bullshit.
Yeah, it is. See, capitalism does one thing. It's all about profits.
It
Period. End of conversation.
it
There's nothing else to capitalism other than making profits.
it eats itself.
It can, yes. And unregulated, it will, absolutely will eat itself. Now, to give you a concept of this, have you ever heard of a dog called a min pin? They look like a miniature Doberman pinscher.
I think I know of what you speak. I don't recall
Okay.
it off the top of my head, but
They're tiny dog. And the problem with the min pin breed specifically is that when you get them, when you get one, assuming you get one as a puppy, okay, you have to teach them that it is not okay to eat nonstop because they will eat nonstop to the point of where they will die.
that's a
Okay.
problem.
It is a major problem with that breed. And there's probably other dog breeds like that too, maybe even a cat breed or two. I'm not that familiar, but the Min Pin was my first experience with this. And because we had adopted a Min Pin as a rescue late in life, none of the previous owners had done any kind of formal training with her to keep her from overeating. And so when she smelled food, when she heard food, when she saw food, nothing else in the world existed at that point. And she would literally harm herself to try to get to said food. Right. Capitalism is like a min pin who has not been trained. It will literally eat itself to death. If you do some regulation, okay, you don't have to regulate everything, but the important infrastructure stuff that runs on capitalism or is invested in capitalism, that must be regulated so that the infrastructure itself does not eat itself alive. And when people go, oh, that's just, whatever, and start making declarative statements of hippieism or socialism or liberalism or whatever ism they want to throw at it or ists or whatever, I asked them, I said, wait a minute, what do you do for a living? Oh, well, I work in food service or I'm a retailer or, I cut down trees. I'm a lumberjack or whatever it is they might be. Right. It's okay. So you're not a banker. You're not a venture capitalist. You're not somebody who's already making billions of dollars. No. Okay. Well, when the system eats itself, by that I mean it's going to take away your benefits, it's going to take away your savings, it's going to take away your house, your livelihood, and everything until it gets what it wants, if there's no regulation, which means that it will literally keep going until it kills you. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Somebody forgot to pay attention in history class.
Yep. Anybody that wants to go ahead and say that government oversight is too much? Okay. So, at what age are we allowed to have children dying of black lung? It's a simple question. It's a simple thing. Once upon a time ago, there were no labor laws protecting children. And families had more children in order to get as many arms as they could into the workplace so that they could, make money. And if manual labor was all that you had down the coal mines, you died of black lung at, 12.
Or how about minimum wage? Although that's not a livable wage anymore.
It's
But when
not.
it first when it first started, it was a wage that guaranteed a roof over your head, a vehicle, enough food on the table for a family of four, so two kids and two adults. All right. and all the bills were paid. It was not sustenance living. It was a thriving wage.
And
Okay.
there was comfort enough in there also for amenities and entertainment and recreation as well.
Yeah. And the point of it is that, if a business couldn't afford to pay somebody a minimum wage, then they shouldn't be in business, because the only way they were making um, bank was by taking advantage of the employees. So minimum wage was literally designed, okay, to protect the American worker. All of them, every single one of them, right? From the lowest person on the peg hook who mops the bathrooms at a fast food joint to the person in an executive boardroom. It was to protect everybody equally, unilaterally, and it worked. But
Yep.
the problem is that companies were going, well, if I've got to pay people a living wage, then I'm not going to pay them anything else. Oh, and then when the employees would complain, they say, well, blame the government because I have to pay everybody equally. You don't get a raise. And they turned the public against themselves. They literally did that. And that's why we don't see many people fighting for a true living wage right now. But more and more people are starting to wake up to the concept of, I can't live on $7.50 an hour. I work 3 jobs and I still can't, or not me personally, but people were making statements of, working 3 minimum wage paying jobs and not being able to pay the bills because somebody decided the housing market wasn't expensive enough, or that, the cost of living wasn't expensive enough. And you hear the excuse after excuse after excuse to not fight to be treated fairly. Well, life's not fair. It's like, you're right. However, we can make it more fair by not allowing things to go so out of control by using a little bit of regulation. I mean, do you like having clean drinking water in the tap from your house? Although, if you live in certain areas of the US, you might not have it because regulation's not really enforced, but it should be.
Yes, it should.
So now we have justices, chief justices, people who are on the highest of the high of the court. Think of like a king, where the king goes, who's the real owner of this child? Well, I'm decided I'm giving this child to that family over there. Now, granted, chief justices don't usually do custody battles, but when the king lays down his hand, or the queen in a monarchy lays down her hand, that's it. It's law. Well, when a chief justice makes a decision, guess what? It's a law. So why aren't the lawmakers following the laws that they help make? Because they can get away with it. They're not being regulated, or it's not being enforced.
Once upon a time ago, on the opposite side of the pay spectrum, it used to be, let's see if I remember right, in the 1930s, I believe is when it was, those that had the top tax brackets. I don't know what the percentage was, and it doesn't really much matter. But those that were making the most amount of money, at a certain point, in a graduated, reminding you, tax scale, they got to a point where at the very top, 95% of what they were earning in that top tax bracket was taxes instead of just income. And reminding you, we're talking about people that were earning, millions of dollars, millions upon millions of dollars by today's standards. So it was worth it for these individuals, for these companies, especially, to, instead of just allowing that money to come in and just have it taxed and go to the government, if they spent it on specific things that were of benefit, it helped to reduce the tax burden for them.
Oh
Investing
yeah.
in new technologies, investing in new machinery, investing in new employee benefits and such. When things like
Yeah.
that happened, they were able to offload some of that tax burden. It filtered down correctly to the people that needed it, and the government still got their tax money, and the companies got to keep, you know, some more, but it wasn't a complete outrageousness. And
More
everybody was
importantly,
able to keep doing their thing.
when you talk about trickle down economics, that was the true trickle down,
Yeah.
because the businesses decided how much they wanted to trickle and where to put it. They could have, let a like a release, open the dam floodgates and let all it go to the government. Or they could control the flood and go, okay, we're going to invest in safety equipment over here because we get a tax break on it. Although we're just going to claim it's really for the employees. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. We're going to invest in our employees here. Look, we give them a little bit of extra cash. They put in extra work, and we actually make more profit. Keep them happy, and they do better work. What amazing! What a concept. You know, things like that. Give them time off. Let's do some parties during the holidays, so on and so on. And boy, did it work. It
Yeah.
really did work.
Yeah. Trickle down economics does not work if there is no regulation to it. When the
Correct.
groups are forced to do the job that the nebulous trickle down economics thing is supposed to do, according to the model, it works. That's one of the reasons why Joseph, on many an occasion, has said that profit for a company, profit is simply wages that has been withheld from the workers. To a certain point, I cannot disagree. I absolutely could not disagree with that. Because the workers, the lowest of the workers in any organization, are the ones who bear the largest brunt. They're the ones getting screamed at when screaming Mimis come in. They're the ones that have to do the leg work, the actual grunt work, the physical moving of product, the transportation of it, manufacturing of it, R&D on it. They're the ones that are actually doing the hard part of it all. So when there is the argument that big government ain't the way to go, sorry, that just ain't the case. Because without rules, the base instincts take over. And the base instinct is mine. Screw you, mine. And if you don't have anybody overseeing it, what the hell happens? The big get bigger, the small get smaller, and then suddenly, oh, look at that. There's an imbalance in society. Who knew? Yeah, all of us that have been watching for the last, all of our lifetimes knew. Stephanie's pointed out, by the way, the original Chief Justice was the king in this country 1,000 years ago. Our judicial system is formally that old. To get into our Supreme Court, you have to work your way up, and we have rules. There are a lot of courts in our country and in different jurisdictions because it's 50 individualized jurisdictions. It's not uniform across them all in any way. Some of them are voted in by the public. Some of them are appointed by the head of the executive branches, depending as what's going on. As far as to moving up the ladder of seniority, so to speak, it's not exactly the way that it's done, but it kind of can follow that area if you put yourself out there enough. If you've shown that you're a good judge at a lower court, you could conceivably, then petition to run for another office or ask to be appointed to a higher one as things go on. But there is no quote unquote pecking order, shall we say? There's no ladder of what's the word that I'm looking for? Um, there's no ladder of
I'm not sure.
you're working at a job promotion. That's what I'm looking for. There's no ladder of
Gotcha.
promotion in the judicial branch of our government, typically. Now, it's entirely possible there are areas this that actually does happen. I am not well enough familiar to say that it never happens. So maybe there are areas where it does. I don't know. But the point of it is, it's just it's just a hot mess a lot of times. It's just a big ass. It's just a big ass problem in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and to put a dollar amount on that problem of, the kind of, I want people to look at gas prices.
Okay.
Okay. Look how high they are in your part of the US, assuming you're in the US. Know that they could be half that price, and the oil companies would still make billions with a B, bravo, dollars of profit. Okay. The only reason it's as high as it is because they can get away with it. Because the regulation in place doesn't forbid them from doing that.
Yeah. And traditionally, as I've understood it, that's what laws are supposed to be set up for, telling people what they are not allowed to do. There are very few situations where there are actual things that say what can an individual do. Usually it's supposed to be curtailing what the government is not permitted to do, and then what is an individual not permitted to do. And it's supposed to be in the line of for the societal good. For example, the idea that so many people would love to bring up for a variety of reasons, the idea of injuring mortally another member of society. Homicide. I'm not going to say the M word, homicide. There are a couple possible ways as to how that could end up happening. It could be because you intended to, it could be that it was an accident, it could be that you did something wrong and because of it, a chain of events led to.
Yep. And we actually have ratings for that, depending on the type it was. How the context in homicide severely matters, is critical, I should say.
Yeah, context
And
matters.
yeah, context definitely matters in the case of a homicide, because it can mean the difference between somebody going to jail for defending themselves or going to jail because they were the ones who started it.
So when the government comes up with a law that says that you are not allowed to do this, usually there is a harm value that's associated. As Tech said, there are certain degrees of severity that go along with that. And, here in the US, we typically think of things like, the most notorious of them being first degree murder. It's not murder, it's homicide, thank you very much, but be that as it may, which is somebody intentionally goes out there, gets ready for, and plans out how they're going to go out there and intentionally end the life of another human being. And then do
Hmm.
it. And then do it. And are successful at it.
Yeah, like some of the massive school shootings that we've had in this country.
Unfortunately, most of them is a fair caveat on that. Be that as it may. Now, there are possibilities for how severe, even inside of that, the punishment would be if someone is found guilty of, legally guilty of, which is a different level from morally guilty for. But ultimately, it's supposed to come down to that's what government's job is supposed to be. enforcing these ideas that we need to behave in such a manner that it does not detriment society. It seems like a very low bar to me, but, you know, whatever. I'm not a lawyer. I don't pretend to be. I'm not a, well, as Stephanie's pointing out over here, I'm not a magistrate. I'm not a barrister. I'm
I think we've kind of beat the crap out of the concept of lacking regulation and how harmful it is.
That's fair.
We're not saying it. We're not really saying anything new. The arguments for and against regulation and deregulation are innu-
Innumerable.
they're so numerous that I can't count them all. But I want people to understand um, that Chief Justice Samuel Alito, right? Remember, I said he took a plane, right?
Mm.
Okay, so the if he had chartered, there was somebody at ProPublica who did the calculations. Okay, and now the person who chartered the plane took him to Alaska, took him fishing and everything else, right, and paid for the lodging and everything. Was a hedge fund billionaire by the name of Paul Singer, who had repeatedly asked the Supreme Court to rule in his favor in high stakes business disputes. So this is a conflict of interest right here. This is a blatant conflict of interest. If it were me, based on the paperwork and agreements that I personally signed, I would be seeing jail time for this. Um, the calculations were that if the Supreme Court justice had chartered the plane himself, the cost could have easily exceeded $100,000 one way. Okay, based on the type of plane, the fuel costs, hiring a pilot, the whole 9 yards. Assuming this guy isn't a pilot himself, which I doubt. The lodge charge that they stayed at charges more than $1,000 a day because it's a luxury fishing lodge.
That in and of itself is highway robbery, but you know what? Whatever. That's not the piece that we're
Yeah,
going
I
on.
mean, look, if I won the lottery and fishing was my thing, it's not, but if fishing was my thing, and I had the chance to spend maybe a day or two in a luxury fishing lodge for $1,000 after having just won a multi-million-dollar lottery, I might do it once just for the experience. It's kind of like somebody going to um, get that $1,000 bowl of ice cream made with the top grade vanilla bean in the world and all that other stuff, right? But most people who have done that do that like once, and then they go back and go back to eating Edie's or whatever. Um, and it turned out 6 years later, the Supreme Court did agree to resolve a key issue in a 10-year-long running battle between Singer's hedge fund and the nation of Argentina, whatever. Uh, Judge Alito did not recuse himself from the case, voted in the majority of Singer's favor, and the hedge fund was ultimately paid out or received $2.4 billion. A flight to Alaska potentially ensured that this case was in Singer's favor. Doesn't mean it did, but it opens up an ethic that that's an ethics review, and that's a nasty one.
Minimally, at minimum.
Right.
If there were any kind of ethics review that were available to be put into place.
And that's the thing. This did, but he failed to disclose it back in 2008. So there is a federal law that requires justices to disclose most gifts, and basically, um, you know, according to experts, they looking throughout the chief Supreme Court justice history could not identify an instance where a justice had actually ruled on a case after receiving an expensive gift paid for by one of the parties involved in the case.
Now, as I've said, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not versed in law. And even I, listening to this, would be like, dude, you gave me a gift and then you're asking me to adjudicate on your thing that's going on. I'm sorry. That's gonna be a big old negatory. I'm not gonna be involved in something like that.
And this is a case where the regulation doesn't really do much because the justices are almost entirely left to police themselves with regards to ethical issues. They have very few restrictions on what gifts they can accept. And when the potential conflicts arise, the arbiters of whether the Supreme Court justice should step away from the case is that person themselves.
And as we've already
That's
stated, into the ground, that simply just does not work. Period.
no, it doesn't.
So now the Chief Justice is going ahead and saying, amongst other things, and I'm paraphrasing here just a little bit, that Congress, going back to what I was talking about before, the legislative branch of government, does not have the authority to impose an ethics rule set on the court.
They can if they write it.
They can if they can write it. Exactly right. Because according to the Constitution, that's what Congress can do. And that is the power that is enumerated to them to be able to do. Because that whole, remember the whole triangle thing that each one of them is supposed to keep check and balance on the other? So, the reason why I wanted to have us kind of go into the whole piece about this, okay, no, wait, let me read it the way that I wrote it for the show notes. We get to discuss not only why he is wrong, which we kind of have, but why that idea is corrupt from its inception. That's the piece that is so interesting to me on this one. Because the only reason why someone would go ahead and willingly state, you're not allowed to have oversight over me in a checks and balance system, is if they have something to hide. And before anybody gives me grief about this one, I know this seems to fall under the, well, if you've got nothing to hide, I should be allowed to search you thing. I get that. But it's not nearly the same thing. If they're supposed to be co-equal governments, if each branch is supposed to be keeping tabs on the other to make sure that everybody's working the way that they're supposed to, and this is the one court that is a complete standout from everybody else, simply because they're expected to have the propriety for the job that they're in, the position, the office that they hold, I'm sorry. No. We've seen that cannot be trusted anymore. As much as I hate that, and believe me, I hate that.
And it's an improper analogy to say, well, if you have nothing to hide, then you don't mind searching your car. No, this is the wrong analogy. A proper analogy for regulating, a code of ethics against the Supreme Court justices would be more of a line of, hello, officer. If you honestly have not been breaking the law when interacting with the general public, you won't mind wearing this body cam from the moment you start being on duty to the moment that you're off duty, where it's recording nonstop, where you can't interfere with it and interrupt it or delete the recordings or anything at all, and that it is open to a public review. That's the equivalent, not you having your car searched just because you have nothing to hide, but more of holding the police accountable for their daily activities. That's the proper analogy.
Yeah. And yeah, there are probably nuances where somebody is going to, actually, yeah, again, we're not lawyers. We don't pretend to be. The analogy may have flaw to it, but you know what? I don't want anybody to be actualing us
It's
about it. As far as I feel about it, it's damn close enough. And I'm on board. There should be visible oversight. The public should be able to know what its highest members, its most powerful people are doing, because they have the highest influence on what the country does as a whole. I think I should have a little bit of knowledge as to what's going on for them, no?
I agree with you.
Part of the problem with this is that in the United States, the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, is an appointment that is set upon the way it's supposed to operate. Again, supposed to. When there is a vacancy to be filled, the executive branch selects a nominee, someone that they believe is worthy of the position, is qualified, and they submit that candidate to the legislative branch, who then do their investigation. They question the person, and they decide, basically as a thumbs up or thumbs down, if they are qualified for the job. It's not supposed to be some kind of litmus test to find out, well, how would you vote on this already established item, which in the US has typically been the Roe versus Wade, the thing about, the
Oh, you
legality
mean that
of
almost
abortion.
100-page document that Alito did about how terrible abortion was and unethical and all that other crap? Where he went on
Yeah.
a 100-page rant showing that he was not qualified to make a decision on it?
The
That he
problem,
couldn't separate church and state?
see, and this is why I get so upset about so much of this. I have started rewatching parts of The West Wing, and I was specifically watching season 5. The episode name is The Supremes, and they have uh they have a vacancy that suddenly opens up in the Supreme Court. 51, 52-year old on the court just suddenly had a heart attack, dead. And they're going through the whole rigmarole of trying to find somebody that should be able to be in, filling that seat. And one of the judges that they brought in is portrayed by Glenn Close. Glenn Close. I can talk. Who, by the way, amazing character that she portrays. Smart. Just, I mean, just smart as a whip. Classy. Knows what's going on. And I'm not going to spoil the what ends up happening with it, but I will tell you, holy shit. People who are ethical, responsible, smart, intuitive, and able to read the room that they're not even in, I would take that fictional person over so many real judges these days any day of the week, simply because of that. But we don't seem to have that sometimes now, do we? We get people who are brought on board, who are chosen by the legislative branch for yes or no based on which ideological position they hold on a handful of already established case laws. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. That's not the way that the responsibility is written for the legislative branch in such a situation. So the idea of having the legislative branch, Congress and senators, writing up a set of ethics laws for the Supreme Court and getting it passed seems daunting, to put it nicely. Because there are so many ideologues who are still very much of the opinion of, we don't care what our position is, all we want to do is hurt them. And at that point, what in the hell do you do?
Yeah. I mean, assume for the moment that we're only targeting we're only looking at creating a code of ethics because of Supreme Court Justice Alito, right? He's demonstrated repeatedly that he cannot separate church from state. That's something our government officials are supposed to be doing. Church happens at church, state happens at state. End of story. That's how it's supposed to be. But he obviously cannot do that. He is very anti-woman. He has demonstrated that before in the past and through his rulings and the documentation that he publishes in his rulings. This is not a man who should be in a position of authority when he's demonstrated that he is not qualified on the simplest of levels. When you've I would not be surprised if he ended up coming out as being a closeted homosexual because of the level of homophobia he has demonstrated before.
Oh, there are a lot of Congress critters and folks that I think are going to end up falling into that after the fact, or probably after their demise.
Yeah, but that's the point, you know. It's we need a clean house. The government needs a facelift, but not a superficial one. They need to get down to the bone. They really need to get rid of the tumors and the scar tissue and everything, and get it back into a functional working order that it was supposed to be, or like it used to be.
Yeah.
To a degree.
Stephanie's pointed out over here, the majority of the current SCOTUS, Supreme Court of the U.S., have no ethics.
Agreed.
Agreed. And the reason why we can agree on that is because there is an expression in artistic circles, and it's usually got to do with film making or in plays, live action plays, productions. Show, don't tell.
Well, the easiest way to show is take a current code of ethics used by the majority of judges and apply it to the Supreme Court and see how many of those in the Supreme Court would be out on their ass overnight.
Yeah.
At least 3 of them that I can think of.
Minimally.
And considering how few Supreme Court justices there are, that's a significant number.
And that's also a number that needs to change, but that's a whole other argument for today. The thing about it also is that, what was it that he was saying about who's attacking whom on this thing? The idea of imposing.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that who's imposing what on whom. That
he feels that he needs to defend himself
because it's a personal attack on him,
right.
Asking for an ethics state for the court at large.
Yeah, and as we've seen in the past, when the people do bad things and they know they've done wrong, they have multiple paths of attack to try to take away. They'll blame somebody else for they'll claim that somebody else did something that they essentially did. Not blame them for the same like crime, but say that show that they're well, so and so did such and such and such and such to try to get the attention off themselves. They'll try to turn the attention onto somebody else, or they'll try to claim that they're being attacked and you should pity me, or you should come more to my side because you know oh boo hoo, which is essentially what he's saying. Nobody's there to defend me, so I have to make a stand. And of course, when you look at religious zealots, they love that shit.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, the conservative party loves that shit. A lot of conservative voters seem to love that shit. So they're eating it up. It was like, yeah, he's standing up for himself. The government. It was like, he is the government, asshole.
The thing
A little
about it for
flared.
me, yeah, the thing about it for me also is that as much as there is the yelling and screaming and gnashing of teeth, or you are you are you're persecuting me for things that I had done. Yeah. Meanwhile, there are those of us who are on the opposite side of the spectrum, politically speaking, who are very much of the opinion, and dare I say the right opinion, although some of us are described as being on the left. I don't know that I'm necessarily doing this correctly, but I would say that this is the correct opinion. Investigate. Investigate them all. If it's somebody that would otherwise be on my side on a situation and would be voting for would be ruling based on my best interests or the one for the group that I am part of, investigate them all.
Yeah, do it equally. Nobody's asking to only attack or go after or persecute somebody. We're saying, look, we want them all to have the same standard and same accountability. We don't want them to have the ability to, you know, do whatever the hell they want in that particular position of authority because the potential for abuse has been demonstrated when compared to requirements and restrictions and regulation of other judges of other levels. So we need to hold them to the same standard to prevent that from happening in the future, or at least having a course of action should it happen again.
And
But
chances are somebody will try minimally. We want we want the ones who have made the screw ups gone. And we don't care what side of the aisle they are from. We want we want the rules followed. Does that make us, sheep because we have to follow the rules? No. Yet again, the whole thing about bigger government is to make sure that everybody is following the rules the same way. That's why you have umpires in a baseball game. That's why you have referees in an American football game. You have them there because they are supposed to be the unbiased crew. They're supposed to be the ones to ensure that everybody is playing by the rules to make it a fair and level playing field. And if that's a problem for somebody, oh well, get another job. Because if everybody's supposed to be playing by the same rules and you don't feel like you should have to play by the same rules, piss off, I believe is the common expression. Go pound sand. I don't want to come up with it because, it doesn't matter at that point.
yeah, just stick your thumb in it. It'll be fine.
I want the son of a bitch off the bench.
I want all of those who have been breaking the rules. And I honestly do not feel that the conservative side of the political aisle think or truly believe that the other side has done enough to get themselves taken down a peg or two either. And they forget that power corrupts across the board.
Yep.
And there's plenty under every single label that have done something that breaks the law or breaks a code of ethics that need to be handled. They may not have done as much of one kind of nasty thing than the other, but if they're still breaking the rules, then they need to be held accountable. And despite what I've registered as a registered voter, despite who I've supported in the past, it doesn't matter to me if there's somebody I support or not. If they've broken the rules, I want them held accountable. Otherwise, what fucking good is it?
Exactly.
People are like, and I've actually heard people go, "Oh, look at Hunter Biden, this, that, the other thing, and Biden this and Biden that." And I was like, "Yeah, and you know what? A former president did worse, and you weren't calling him out on it. So, how about we go ahead and go forward on the whole Biden thing? But you remember that next time one of your guys is in office or gals or whatever, and they're doing wrong, you call them out too."
But yet they don't. And they won't.
And they definitely won't.
Which,
I would wager money on it, and I don't like to bet.
and of course, that still just falls into the whole damn same thing. Without a functioning ethics rule, groups will simply do whatever it is that they want to do, and it devolves into mine. Economics is very, very, very little different from societal behavior when all is said and done. I don't even know what more there could be. A little. I'm starting to get a little too tired in behind my eyes. Those of you that have been, those of you that have been watching over on the YouTube feed, you've probably seen that I've been blinking more than I even normally would have, and I admit, watching myself, I tend to blink a lot, but it's because I got contacts and it's dry, and it's what it is. I'm not even sure what else I could even add, and a good portion of this is also because behind my eyes, things are really getting to be mushy. Jack, if there's something that you want to go ahead and finish off with, I think now's probably about as good a time as any, because I don't want to go too much further and be a gibbering
I'll posit
mess.
this is kind of a what if scenario.
Sure.
Recently in the news, a company made headlines because it was selling, I believe it was bone graft or skin graft, one of the two products that were infected with a particularly nasty strain of tuberculosis.
Ooh.
Oh yeah, big time.
I hadn't heard
Right?
about this one. Holy shit.
Now, assume for the moment that this particular case was being held in the Supreme Court justices,
All
right?
right.
And this company, several years ago, took a couple of those Supreme Court justices out for vacations. They went fishing, or they went camping, or they went to a private reserve or whatever, and ungodly amounts of money were thrown at them, right? And it was never reported. And now there's a case being held, and they're voting in favor of letting this company get off the hook. Do you think the trips may have influenced that one? But more importantly, when it was all said and done and the smoke clears, now you have to go talk to the families about the tuberculosis that have all these tuberculosis infections and say, oh, well, we took it all the way to the Supreme Court justices, and they said everything's fine, hunky dory. You don't have a case anymore, and the buck stops there. Have a nice day. Good luck with the TB treatments. You know, could you do that? Could you go see all those people and tell them, don't worry, they regulated themselves. Obviously, they were very honest about the whole thing. You know, just saying. You know, it's you may not think hedge funds are a big deal, but that's somebody's life savings. That's the markets are nasty. Okay, so it can be just as lethal as tuberculosis when somebody's money's played with like that. And hedge fund managers and companies are notorious for playing with people's money, which is why I wish people would stop giving it to them. Anyway, that's my piece.
All right. Like I said, my brain is getting mushified now, and it's sneaking up fast actually right now, which is kind of humorous because I can kind of feel what it is that's going on, and I'm not enjoying that because right now I'm still sitting on my tush instead of lying in bed waiting for it to happen. I'll end it all with this: the Supreme Court is the last bastion where we should have expected propriety would supremely rule. Puns intended. We have thought for many years that these are supposed to be the people who have the sharpest minds, the best understanding of the rule of law, of how questions as to what is a good law and what is not should come to be finally figured out and given to the why. The most notable question that had ever come up in a court proceeding was, I'm not going to argue whether or not I'm guilty or not guilty of this charge that's been brought in front of me. I contend the law itself is unconstitutional and illegal. Ergo, this entire court proceeding is moot. If somebody would come up with that today, they would have to bring it in front of these 9 justices, and it's 9 currently. Want it to be more. What happens when the actual question of the legitimacy of a law comes up, and there are people sitting in the adjudication panel who have a vested interest or have already been swayed and biased, and they refuse to recuse themselves, where there is no panel, there's no option, there's no formality for making sure that they are recused as a preventative measure. There's no machination for it. This job is supposed to be for making sure that everybody stays safe and held properly, legally, to the law. And if these people cannot themselves be held to the very same laws that every other in their group is held to, then dare I say, they don't deserve the fucking job. And if anybody's got a problem with that, you're more than welcome to come to me, and I'll hash it out with you too. Because, and this is going to be one of those few times I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say it, you want to argue with me? Feel free. But just know this now. You'll be wrong. how often do I ever actually go ahead and say something like that, Tech? Seriously, how the hell often do I go ahead and say with
Not too
absolute
much.
surety that if somebody's going to argue with me, they're just going to be wrong?
Not too often.
No. Usually I save that for, 2 or 3 interactions into a Facebook argument, and then, well, that's a whole other thing. I don't get into those like I used to. I kind of miss it to a certain
Yeah,
degree. But
I'm glad I got rid of Facebook and Twitter and all that. I
now
kind of misread it, but let me start to kind of hang with me a bit.
that's fair enough. And I'll
And I don't mean just a musician.
I'll tell you a funny after we get off the air, because there's a funny that kind of goes along with that I don't want to share with anybody. So we'll work with that. So folks, thank you very much for being with us tonight. We hope that you found something worthwhile in all of our perspectives, and you got something to think about for yourself for the week ahead. Stephanie, sorry it was just you for tonight. Thank you, of course. There wasn't much that we could really interact with on this one, but as usual, you got some good points thrown in there, and as always, just really appreciate it. Yet again, I've been a little bit busy, haven't been checking on the weather reports out your way. Just stay safe. The storms that came through our neck of the woods, so to speak, I sincerely hope they just finally pitter out over the water before it gets to you. So just be careful and stay safe. Appreciate it. Tech, wow, just you and me for a change. That doesn't happen very often. Fun
No,
time.
usually I abandon you and let you just deal with Brigid.
Something like that. But hey, I didn't fall asleep this time. Neither did you. So this was a good night.
Wait, you had an episode where you fell asleep?
I'm pretty damn close to it right now. So
Oh,
there's
okay.
always an opportunity for one time for it to happen.
Yeah, I will never bet on that happening.
Very likely not, but cordiasis still a thing.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind. Anyway, again, everybody, please do take care of yourselves, and please be safe. As I've said on many an occasion, if you want to get stupid drunk, please do it on dry land. Do not drink and boat. That is a really, really bad way to end your
Especially
summer.
during a hurricane.
Fortunately, at this point, last I heard, I don't think that there are any tropical storms even, but the way that the storms have been progressing over the last couple of years, I would not be at all surprised if hurricane season doesn't like suddenly pop up very, very quickly and just, hey guys, look at me. I'm a Cat 5.
Yeah, no shit.
I'm looking forward to that. In the meantime, all of our contact info is over at holycrapthevlogcast.com. The audio version of the podcast, you can get the link right over there. Feel free. If you'd like to be in touch with us, leave a voicemail message, send a text message. You can do that at phone number 859-HCTV-554, 859-428-8554. And we will be talking to you again sometime soon. And just, again, just please be safe. Cannot stress that enough. Considering I've been out and dealing with the heat in 80 plus weather, yeah, not fun. And for anybody that's wondering, 80 Fahrenheit, 80% humidity is a bad combination. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
So, until the next time, everybody, as always, I wish you all the peace I no longer have. I wish you the strength that I've learned. I wish you well. And my lady, 18 years on. 30-year anniversary went past. I am still in love. Well, Matane Fujin, I love you, I miss you, dream of me. Till the next time we're together, everyone, as always, good